I was reading through your IMDb, and basically, like, when you took this film, it was, I guess, 2 years, give or take, into the pandemic. It was like 2021. So, like,
Yeah.
what was it about this specific screenplay, the Eraser screenplay, that where like this is the project I want to get back into, like
Back
back working? Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Wow. It really hit me hard with the first question, Rohan. I love that. It was such a horrible time for everyone in every career. Nobody could work and money was dwindling and people were suffering. And for me, nothing mindset wise had really changed. I try and take jobs based on a new challenge, based on something that I haven't tried before, something that I think is going to push myself in a different direction. And that hadn't really changed post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I'd done a TV show called Penny Dreadful with John Logan for Showtime, which is a very, very different character as a period piece. And this presented new challenges that I was excited about. Everything from sort of the stunts to the limited time, to filming in a new location, to filming with a whole new group of people. That's an interesting thing that people don't really talk about. Like in our industry, everything's exactly the same, but a little bit different if you film in a new place. So also filming in a new place is a fun little challenge as well. And I think when I read it, I was like, this is the challenge for me. This is the one that I want to do.
Yeah, man. And it's like you're talking about the stunt work, which is, I think you've done Shadowhunters, you've done Penny Dreadful, but this is a different kind of action. This is like a lot more realistic, a lot more practical stuff that you're working on. So what was that experience like, the training that you had to undergo and then actually shooting?
Right. So we had, first of all of the credit goes to our two amazing choreographers. It was Stuart and V. They put so much work and effort into each individual character and defined each character based on sort of the martial arts that they would have learned and their body structure, their experience as actors, what we could perform and what we could work through. And they really did put in the time with us. And then we got it's called a previs, which is sort of a roughly thought out film of how this fight scene is going to go. And then you get there and you practice it and you make sort of adjustments. And then when you get to set, you have to make other little adjustments because it's raining or because there's something there that we didn't think was going to be there, whatever it is. But it was, you're right. It was a new challenge. Shadowhunters was swords mostly. It was Taekwondo and Kali and Kendo were the martial arts that we learned. And this was much more like sort of military fighting, like put someone down as quickly as you can to stop that person being a threat for whatever reason. And that is what we sort of worked on this. And it's much less sort of balletic. It's much less like a dance. It's quite, there's a sort of a brutality to it. And that's what we worked on. And then we worked on, as you were saying, sort of the realism of different elements. So sort of towards the end of the movie, wounds are starting to take a hold as an example. So towards the end, there are different wounds that start to evolve over the course of the film, and you start to realize that those wounds actually have a huge impact on your body. They stop you from using an arm, for example, or they stop you from doing X, Y, and Z, and we have to build that into the fight scenes. And they were, both V and Stuart were absolutely amazing at taking those sort of notes and elements and developing them into these scenes that we put together. So all of the credit goes to them.
Yeah, no, they put you through the ringer, especially. I think the third act, you're all over you're doing evading the rhinos and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But so like when you're working like very closely with McKinley, who's your adversary in the movie more or less, and so like what was it sort of like working with him and developing that kind of, because you're also, again, you're coming back from like staying socially distanced from everyone, and then you're very close, up and close. So you're doing hand-to-hand combat, you're doing tactical training, all that kind of stuff. So what was that developing it with him and just kind of building that rapport?
That's such an interesting thing, because the only member of the cast and crew that I met before we got to South Africa, which is where we filmed, was Jacki, because she was on Shadowhunters with us. And it's this interesting thing. So when McKinley and I first met, I was leaving a stunt rehearsal and he was arriving to a stunt rehearsal, and I sort of hung around, say hi, we have to develop this rapport as partners and this and the other. And it had completely escaped my mind, but I was wearing a mask, obviously, for the COVID protocols. I said, "Hey, McKinley, how's it going?" And he just sort of went, "I don't know who you are." And I was like, "Oh, shoot, sorry, it's Dom. Hey, how's it going?" And they were like, "Oh, right, got it." And I think one of my favorite things about working with McKinley is he has this like integral intelligence that is sort of run with passion when it comes to these jobs. So he developed these people and these relationships from a wildly intelligent, fairly inspiring point of view, which was really quite special to be a part of. So working with him was one of the great things in this business is when you work with someone new and they inspire you to like, oh, these are really cool elements of how you do your job, and I want to sort of take some of those in and move forward a little bit more like you, I guess.
Yeah, no, you guys had solid chemistry. I enjoy, and then like you said, Jacki, you worked with her already, so like, but this time you're in a sort of different dynamic where you're paired, you're her protector, but then you're also romantically paired. So like, what was it kind of working with her, like having already known her? Did that help like ease you into playing your part?
I guess not really. No, it was sort of, I mean, the benefit of that is I sort of understand, I understood starting off how Jacki sort of works and how she operates, which is great. But you know, we're developing two completely new characters with two completely new relationships. So I think you always sort of start from a, you know, a blank book, as it were, you know, a blank page, and have to sort of build these characters up as they were. But the benefit there is definitely that I already had previous experience of how she works.
Oh, awesome. And so like there are a lot of animals in the movie, but I mean a lot of them are CGI, obviously. But were there actually any on set that you got to interact with?
Yeah, it's actually, was it day one? No, that can't be true. It was within the first week for sure. But the ostrich is real. Yeah. She was a real bird. And they had two of them on set, and I was really excited to meet them, a little intimidated because they're big, very strong creatures. And I was a little intimidated, and they had these two, you know, gorgeous birds. And I can't remember the South African word for it, but it basically just meant like silly bird. That's what that was her name. That's what they called her. And she was impeccably well trained. But there's a fun story about ostriches. So ostriches like shiny things. And it's sort of drawn to them. Like back in the day, they used to eat diamonds off the floor down in you know, the diamond lewd stretches of Africa. And as a result, I didn't have anything really shiny on me except my United States Marshal's badge, which is down, we can't obviously see it because of the camera, but it's down my waistband. So we'd be filming with these two ostrich, and they were ostriches, ostrigi, I don't know, who knows. Who knows? But
I don't know either.
I couldn't tell you. But they were impeccably well trained. There was the one that we filmed with, and then the younger one that was sort of learning from the older one how to behave on a set. The only issue we had is every now and then I'd see it sort of eye my badge, and I'm like, nah, it's very close to a sensitive area there. Let's not go pecking around there. You know what I mean? But it was honestly, the wranglers there as well, the animal handlers were absolutely incredible. They said exactly how to work with them, how to move with them. And honestly, the ostrich that we had in that room on that day was so impeccably well behaved. We had maybe 2 or 3 shots with her. And she did exactly what she was meant to do. She was sort of the perfect actor, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that was a real fun moment because it brought some levity after like a bunch of super intense stuff. And so like now you've done ERASER Reborn. So have you ever considered like, which is a classic like Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So have you ever thought of like another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that you could see yourself starring in, like a reboot or a remake?
Oh man, wow. I haven't until you just mentioned it, and now I'm sort of thinking, God, the man was my hero growing up. So yeah, there are so many that I would maybe Running Man. Running Man would be a cool
that's a good one. Yeah,
I loved Running Man. I thought it was such a great movie. But then also there's that tricky thing, isn't there? Because you know it was 1996 was Arnold's original movie with Vanessa Williams and James Caan, which again was one of my favorites growing up. But then when we get this offer, there's a real like, I don't want to try and redo what he did because I loved what he did. I don't want to try and remake that. I have to sort of try and attack it with my own elements. sort of this weird paradox that you end up in, where I would love to do something like Running Man. I would absolutely love to, but then it wouldn't be the Running Man that I loved. It would be a sort of a new version of this story, you know. So it's tricky. Would I want to do that? I guess I'm kind of in two minds about it. Like I'm at the end of the day, I'm an actor. If they keep offering me work, I'm going to keep taking it. That's half the battle.
No, that'd be really cool. You get to say that awesome line, "You've just been erased," which every single time it's just really cool. And then so like speaking from an actor, because you're from England, correct? Yeah. And then so like you do a really perfect like American accent when you're like playing this part.
Thank you very much.
So it's like, have you found it like more when you're working with other actors when they're doing British accents? Because sometimes I like doing a British accent, I feel like it's harder for an American actor versus like for you to do an American accent. What's that sort of like acting challenge?
I would agree. I would agree mostly, and I think a large part of the reason that the American accent for Brits is so much easier is just the saturation of American media over the world. So like growing up, we were watching The Simpsons and they all had American accents, you know, and then we got a bit older and we started watching South Park or, you know, whatever it was. And there were all these sort of American shows. So we were listening to the American accent, and whether you sort of realize it or not, you're going to school and you're mimicking Bart Simpson, you're saying his words with his accent. And really, as far as sort of British voices, I think especially in sort of the 90s, which is where I was growing up, there wasn't a huge amount for American viewers. It's a lot better now, you know, Game of Thrones and Downton Abbey and all of these wonderful shows and movies that have British accents in them. But I think the difficulty maybe there lies just from lack of exposure. It's, you know, something that we have inadvertently been practicing since we were kids. And then I did a movie where I wasn't happy with my American accent, and I did I like one of my first sort of American tests, like my big American auditions. I did an American accent, and they mentioned like, we're going to get you a voice coach for this because we want you to get this role and we want it to just fine tune a little. And I was like, great. And this lady was amazing. She came to my hotel room and worked with me for 2 hours. And it's such an intricate, you know, it's like an instrument. It's like pushing the wrong buttons on an instrument. So I'm trying to say these words, but I'm using the front of my mouth and my tongue and my teeth, which is how a Brit would say it. And when you shift into an American accent, I can feel it move kind of right into the back of my throat and back here. And it's a completely different sound. And as soon as you sort of understand like, oh, this is how I play this instrument, then it gets a little easier to try and figure those things out, which was also very helpful for me. And then the last thing, I guess, is I keep the accent on when I'm at work. So I did it with Shadowhunters, and I did it with Penny Dreadful, and I did it with ERASER. And I can't remember what other movies I've been American in. But I keep it on throughout the filming day. And the benefit of that is, especially when you're working with Americans, is I can feel when something, or if I say something, people can say like, that is not how we say that. You would adjust it to this. So even on ERASER, I remember there was a day where I had to, because there's two different ways, I guess, in American, and correct me if I'm wrong, to say sure, the word sure, it's sure or sure, like two different sounding vowel sounds. So I had to ask John which one of those is correct. And he went, I don't know. I think they're both correct. You just say what you want to say. You know, it's one of those tricky balances. So yeah, you know, it's, I think a big part of acting in general is the understanding that you're always learning. Like you can't fill a full cup, you know, you have to be open to these new educations coming at you.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. You worked really hard at it. So like you could really tell, like if had I not known going into it, like I would have just thought you were an American. But
thank you so much, man. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, you really did a good job. And so like now, like as you're getting back into, you've done a couple series and you've done this movie, and I think you're working on another series now. But it's like, what kind of roles are you like kind of seeking out, and what kind of roles like interest you?
It's so interesting. Like it's so sort of, there isn't, I mean, there's one very particular role that I've wanted to play since I was a kid, and but it's Bond. It's James Bond. Yeah. You know, every young British man wants to play Bond at some point. Every young British actor, arguably every young British person has fantasized about themselves being Bond at some point. But it is a very serious goal of mine. It's something that I've been infatuated with for a long time. So there's that. And then I guess the other side of that is it's so material driven. I don't know that I want to play a part until I get the script and I go, oh wow, actually this is the part I wanted to play. So the show we just finished was a show called Partner Track, which is based on the books by Helen Warren for Netflix. And I didn't know that I wanted to play a young lawyer in New York. Like that's not something I was seeking out, but I got these scripts and started reading them. And Georgia Lee, the showrunner, and her team did a great job with the scripts and the adaptation. And from, you know, just 5-6 pages in, I was like, oh, this is the job I want to do. And I'm going to go after this because this is really cool. And that could be anything, you know, it could be, I just read a script about cowboys, which I thought was amazing. I just read a script about criminals, which was an interesting sort of concept. And for me, I just don't know until I have like, oh, this one, I like this one. And then you have to hope that you're the guy for the role, and you know, you audition your ass off just like everybody else.
Yeah. Speaking of like getting scripts, it's like, since we are like a superhero source website, have you ever been approached about like a superhero project or like a comic book movie type thing? Or
have auditioned for a couple of them. And which is to me, even that is kind of a bit of a blessing, because I don't think everyone gets the opportunity to audition for them. What's interesting is very often you don't know what they are. You get sort of, you know, dummy sides, and I think all of the Marvel guys have been very open about how protective they are over their stories and stuff, and which you know, I understand. There's a lot of people out there who think there's some benefit in sort of showing the rest of the world something on grainy camera footage when that's not how it was meant to be received. Like, it was meant to be received in the theater. That's why we all work so hard to put it together for, you know, the audience. So I understand why they're so protective over it. So I have read for a couple of I don't even, because that's the issue, is I don't know what they are. I don't know what they were. I don't even really know what the project was necessarily, but I know that I've read for them at some point, and, you know, fingers crossed, here's hoping my super suit is waiting in my future somewhere.
Oh no, there's definitely a role out there for you. And so like I was wondering, because like I know Shadowhunters entered a couple years ago now, but some time has passed and like a lot of things have changed since then, like as far as streaming, the rise of streaming and all that stuff. Like I feel like if Shadowhunters was still on streaming, like there's a good chance it's still running today. So I was like, have you or the cast, like, have you talked about like ever getting back together for a reunion? Or I know Teen Wolf's coming back, so it's something
so I actually don't know who would own the rights to Shadowhunters, which is embarrassing to say because I was on that show for 4 years. I should have known the full ins and outs. But so Kat and I have a podcast now called Return to the Shadows, where we sort of relive some of the Shadowhunter stuff, which is good fun. And we do talk about it every now and then. What would it be like? How would the story be told? You know, whatever it is. But I think there's also a world in which, not necessarily for Teen Wolf or whatever, I'm sure they're going to do an amazing job, but there's a world in which sort of my Shadowhunters journey is over. That I did my piece there, and I loved every second of it, and I'm really happy with the way it ended. Although it was sad that it ended, I was really happy with what we did with the ending, and the guys there, you know, David, the writing team, they did such an incredible job putting this ending together, and I was really proud of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta end it when it's right. And so like I don't want to keep you too long, but it's like, when you're tackling like does your approach differ? I mean, tackling a role, I'm sure your approach is very similar, but it's like when you're attacking something like a TV series versus a movie, has your experience been different? Like just getting into the head of a character that you're going to be with for 30 days versus like for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, totally. So really only in one way, because my approach to developing these characters is always kind of the same. I write a journal from the point of view of the character. So like Mason, for example, I found myself sitting in like coffee shops, writing in my journal, taking in, because, you know, I spoke to some US Marshals about how they, you know, trained and what they did and this, that, and the other. And the number one thing that kept sort of coming up was awareness, like constant, like 360-degree awareness. So I would be writing my journal and I'd be seeing like, this person just walked in with this color top, and I would then try and not focus on that and keep that in my head whilst keeping the other details in my head and putting them down in my journal. And that's always sort of the process. So the only real difference for me is that in TV, I don't know how my story ends.
Mhm.
With the movie, I know how the story ends. So there's a sort of tricky balance there with, like, you know, twists and turns that are written into films. I know that they're going to happen at some point in the story. So I have to sort of forget about them to do whatever the scene is, or remember that that's the case. And I use a little sort of trick that another actor friend of mine taught me years ago, is the A to C of a scene. So and what that is, so you come into a scene with an A, with a goal, whatever it is. You have an ambition. There's something that drove you into this room for whatever reason, and that's your A. Your C is what you're trying to achieve, to what you want to leave that room with, whether it's a conversation having been finished, or if you're going in to grab your wallet, whatever it is. Every one of us goes into a room knowing that there's some reason to go into that room, right? And the middle part is the B, which is how that's changed in the scene. And as long as I keep those in my head, the A, where have I just come from? What am I trying to achieve? The B obviously happens in the scene, and then the C very often is the next A. Does that make sense? It's the next A for the next scene. And that's always sort of been my, even a lot of my scripts will have the handwritten, like, this is the A or whatever. And then when we get our sides on the day, I'll put them down. This is the A for this. This is where we're going. This is the B. This is the C. And it sort of helps me keep my head in a place of, like, where we're at. But yeah, I think those are really that's the only real big difference between TV and film for me.
Awesome. And so, like, and then you already spoke about the one series, but is there anything else you're working on after? Because you finished ERASER last year. You just finished another series.
So I finished ERASER last year, and then was very lucky, almost immediately went into Partner Track, which is the Netflix show that's coming out in soon. I hope, I don't know. And then so we're now sort of back in that place of, like, trying to find the correct role. So there's a couple of scripts that are on my desk that I'm sort of slowly reading through, and it's just about, like I was sort of mentioning earlier, like, it's just finding that one that really resonates with me, and I can kind of I feel it as I'm reading. You know, the pages turn a lot quicker, and I'm like, oh, this is exciting, this is what I want to do. And we as a team, you know, my agents and managers, we're all one team, and we discuss, and these are exciting, and, you know, whatever. So that's where we are now. I have to go back through these scripts and find the one that excites me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dom. I really appreciate it. This has been so cool. I loved hearing you talk about all this.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rohan. Such a pleasure to meet you, man. Take care.
Yeah, you too, brother.